He thought he was meeting his newest Tinder match for dinner. But when he walked into that restaurant, I was already there, watching from across the street, heart pounding, phone in hand. By the time he realized what I'd done, it was already too late. He didn't know it then, but that was the night I ended the engagement and disappeared from his life for good. If you've ever trusted the wrong person or caught someone betraying you when they thought they'd never get caught, this story is for you. Don't forget to subscribe to The Betrayal Diaries, where every life finds the truth and every cheater meets their karma. 5 years ago, I thought I was going to marry the love of my life. Marcus was charming, funny, spontaneous, the kind of man who made everyone in a room feel like they mattered. When we met, I was 28 and working as a graphic designer for a small marketing firm in Wilmington, North Carolina. He was a project engineer at a construction company that handled a lot of coastal development projects. We met at a beach cleanup of all places. He cracked a joke about me saving the ocean one cigarette but at a time, and before I knew it, we were talking about everything: music, travel, our favorite old TV shows. He had this effortless confidence, the kind that draws people in without trying. And at the time, I was craving that energy. I'd just come out of a quiet, unremarkable relationship where I felt invisible. So when Marcus made me feel seen, I mistook that for love. Within months, we were living together. Within a year, he proposed on the same stretch of beach where we first met. I said yes without hesitation. I should have paid attention to the hesitation in his eyes. At first, everything looked perfect from the outside. We had the engagement photos, the planning binder, the Pinterest boards filled with beachfront ceremony ideas. But beneath it all, there were cracks, tiny ones that kept spreading. He started staying late at work more often, claiming deadlines or team drinks. I wanted to believe him, so I did. At least until I noticed his phone habits changing. Marcus had never been secretive about his phone before. He used to leave it on the counter, unlocked, playing music while we cooked dinner. He'd show me memes or random videos. There was trust, easy and natural. Then one night, I reached for his phone to check directions because mine had died, and he practically lunged across the couch. "Babe," I said, startled, "I just need to check how far the restaurant is." He laughed it off, but the tension in his body didn't match his words. "Sorry, just work stuff. They've been sending sensitive project documents lately." He said it so casually that for a moment, I believed him. But that night, when I got up for water around midnight, I saw him asleep, with his phone under his pillow. And that's when the unease began to grow. I told myself I was overthinking, that maybe he was just stressed about work. But over the next few weeks, the little things piled up. He'd go out for drinks and come home smelling like perfume I didn't own. He'd shower before I could even say hello. He'd text in the corner of the room, face angled away from me. The final straw came one night when I was doing laundry and found a receipt in his pocket for a dinner I hadn't been invited to. 2 entrees, 2 glasses of wine, at a nice waterfront restaurant we used to love. I remember sitting there, holding that small slip of paper, staring at the ink like it might change if I looked long enough. It didn't. I wanted to confront him. God, I did. But something in me hesitated. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was fear of being lied to again. Or maybe it was something darker, the need to know before I acted. That's when fate handed me proof. My best friend, Lila, texted me one morning while I was at work. Her message was simple. "Mary, don't freak out, but I think you need to see this." She sent a screenshot. It was Marcus. On Tinder. His bio read, "Adventurous, spontaneous, just looking for someone who gets me. Life's too short to settle." I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. My fiancé, the man who'd chosen wedding cake flavors with me last month, was on a dating app, looking for someone who gets him. That was the moment something inside me snapped, but not in anger. In clarity. Because if Marcus wanted a game, I was going to play it better than he ever could. Lila and I met that night at her apartment. She was the kind of friend who didn't need full context to know what needed to be done. "So," she said, eyes gleaming with a mix of sympathy and mischief, "what's the plan?" I showed her the screenshot. "We make him think he's met someone. Someone perfect. Someone who's definitely not me." She grinned. "You're thinking a catfish." Exactly. We couldn't use my pictures, obviously. But we both had a friend, Chloe, who lived overseas London, I think, and she'd given us permission before to use her photos for little experiments like this. She was gorgeous, unattainably so, hazel eyes, sharp cheekbones, that effortless glow people swipe right on without thinking. We made the profile. Name, Claire. Age, 29. Bio, love the ocean, live music, and men who can make me laugh. It was perfect. Then we waited. We didn't have to wait long. Within 48 hours, Marcus matched with Claire. When I saw his profile appear in the match list, something cold and calm settled over me. Lila squealed. He took the bait. The first message came from him. You have the most amazing smile. I feel like I've seen you before. I almost laughed out loud. The irony of it was absurd. Lila handled most of the chatting at first, pretending to be Claire. Their messages were textbook flirtation, safe, boring, predictable. He talked about work, about how tough things have been lately, and how he was looking for something real. I watched every word, fascinated. The man I loved was flirting with a digital ghost. And the best part? He had no idea she wasn't real, and that his real-life fiancé was watching every line. After a few days of messaging, Claire agreed to meet him in person. We picked a fancy seafood restaurant near the marina, the same one from that receipt I'd found. Poetic, really. The plan was simple. Lila would message him from the fake account to confirm the time and place, and I would be there. Not to confront him. Not to scream. Just to watch. Because sometimes, silence is the loudest revenge. The evening of the date, I dressed simply, jeans, a sweater, nothing that would draw attention. I told Marcus I was going to Lila's for a movie night, and he kissed me goodbye without hesitation. I watched him drive away, calm and composed, my hands gripping the steering wheel just a little too tightly. 15 minutes later, I parked across from the restaurant. Through the window, I saw him walk in, fresh haircut, nice shirt, that easy grin he always used when he wanted to charm someone. He looked happy. I didn't feel heartbreak. I didn't even feel rage. Just finality. I waited until he'd sat down, until I saw him checking his phone, glancing at the door. Then Lila, using the Tinder account, sent the message we'd written together. Hey, I saw you walk in, but I don't think this is going to work. You're not really my type. Sorry to waste your time. I watched him read it. His expression changed in real time, from anticipation to confusion to embarrassment. He looked around the restaurant, scanning faces, probably hoping for a miracle. There wasn't one. He stayed there for 10 minutes. Then 15. Then he paid for a drink he never finished and walked out, shoulders tense, jaw clenched. I sat in my car, hidden behind tinted glass, and whispered, "Game over." Because the best part was yet to come. The drive home that night was quiet. The coastal air was heavy with humidity, and the smell of salt clung to my clothes. Streetlights cast long, crooked shadows across the road, and my reflection in the windshield looked like someone else entirely, calm, composed, but hollow-eyed. I pulled into our driveway around 10. The porch light was still on. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at the front door, the same one we'd painted blue together, laughing over spilled paint and shared Chinese takeout. And it hit me that everything inside that house, the furniture, the framed photos, the coffee mugs with matching initials, was part of a life built on lies. When I walked inside, the air felt thick with silence. The kind that hums in your ears. I sat down on the couch, the same one where he'd once told me he wanted to grow old with me, and I let the realization sink in. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. That night, I made a list. Not of what I'd lost, but of what I still had, my dignity, my independence, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing the truth. And I knew what I had to do next. The next morning, Marcus acted like nothing had happened. He made coffee, hummed in the kitchen, kissed me on the forehead. He even joked about having the weirdest night ever because some woman had stood him up. I remember looking at him, the man who'd lied to my face, kissed me goodbye before going on a date with someone he thought was his secret, and feeling nothing. Not pain, not fury. Just detachment. That was my clarity. My turning point. because while he was still trying to control the story, I was already rewriting the ending. Over the next few days, I started quietly removing myself from our life. It began with the small things: my clothes from the shared closet, my favorite books from the shelf, my files from the office desk. I boxed them neatly, labeling everything and moving them to Lila's apartment a few streets over. Marcus didn't notice. He was too busy working late, which I now knew meant nursing beers and excuses. He'd text me around midnight. "Sorry, babe, long day. Be home late." I'd reply, "No problem. Get some rest." Every word I sent him after that was deliberate, calm, non-confrontational, and impossible to read. Because sometimes, silence isn't surrender. It's strategy. On the third night, I took off the engagement ring. It sat there on the counter, simple, silver, elegant. He'd proposed with it during a sunset picnic, kneeling awkwardly in the sand, laughing when a wave nearly soaked his jeans. Back then, I thought it symbolized love. Now, it was just a debt I'd already paid. So I sold it. $600, not much compared to its original cost, but enough to cover a weekend away somewhere quiet. I didn't need the ring. I needed closure. As the weekend approached, Marcus was getting sloppier. He'd come home half-drunk, toss his jacket on the couch, and scroll through his phone, still convinced he'd hidden his trail. One night, I walked into the kitchen and found him staring at his screen, brows furrowed. "Everything okay?" I asked. He looked startled. Yeah, just work stuff. Deadlines." I smiled. "You've been working a lot lately." "Trying to make sure we're set before the wedding," he said quickly. "It's just a lot right now." I nodded, turned back to the sink, and hid the smile tugging at my lips. Because while he was talking about our wedding, I was already packing for my exit. The plan was simple. I'd wait until Friday, when he'd go out for drinks with his coworkers, and by the time he came home, everything of mine would be gone. No fights. No explanations. Just absence. Because sometimes, the worst punishment isn't confrontation. It's the unanswered question that keeps echoing forever. Friday arrived. The day started like any other coffee routine, a quick kiss before work. He left in his usual rush, tie crooked, cologne heavy. I watched him drive off from the window, the same way I used to when I missed him. But this time, I didn't miss him. I was relieved. I called Lila. "It's time," I said. She showed up 20 minutes later with her hatchback and 2 cups of iced coffee. "Ready?" she asked. More than ever. We moved everything fast. Clothes, books, keepsakes, photos. I left the furniture and anything that tied me to us. When I walked into the bedroom for the last time, I noticed his phone charger still plugged in on my side of the bed, the side he used to call mine. I smiled, unplugged it, and dropped it in the drawer. A quiet little symbol of how much he'd taken for granted. By early evening, the house was empty of me. I stood in the living room, looking around at the blank spaces where my life had been. The only sound was the hum of the ceiling fan. On the coffee table, I left a single white envelope. Inside was a handwritten note that said, "You aren't right for me." That was it. No anger. No closure for him to twist. Just a sentence, clean and final. I locked the door behind me and didn't look back. When Marcus came home that night, I wasn't there to see it. But I can imagine it clearly. He probably walked in, called my name, noticed the missing things. Maybe he thought I was out shopping or at Lila's. Maybe he checked his phone, scrolling for messages that wouldn't come. And then he saw the note. He must have read it once. Then again. Then a third time, trying to find meaning between the lines that wasn't there. Because for a man who spent months lying, he suddenly had nothing left to explain. The next day, Lila texted me. "You won't believe who called me," she said. "Marcus?" "Yup. He's asking why you left. Says he's confused. Hurt." I stared at my phone for a long time before replying. "Don't answer." "Not even to mess with him," she teased. "No," I said. "The silence will mess with him more than anything we could say." And I meant it. Because the beauty of revenge isn't always in the confrontation. Sometimes, it's in the not knowing. Over the next few weeks, Marcus tried reaching out in every way possible. Blocked numbers. Emails. Mutual friends. His messages went from confused to desperate, from please talk to me to you owe me an explanation. But I owed him nothing. He wanted to know why. He wanted closure. He wanted control again. And I wanted him to sit in the same uncertainty he'd forced me to live in. Months passed. I found a new apartment overlooking the marina. Small but peaceful. The kind of place where I could hear the waves at night and remember that life moves forward, even when it feels like it's standing still. Sometimes, I'd pass the restaurant where I'd last seen him waiting, sitting alone, scanning faces that didn't look back. And every time I'd smile. Because he still didn't know. He didn't know how close I'd been that night. He didn't know about the fake Tinder match. He didn't know I'd watched him walk into that restaurant, full of confidence and deceit, and walk out humiliated and alone. And he never would. The funny thing is, I never told anyone outside my closest circle what really happened. To the rest of the world, Marcus was just another failed engagement. A love story that fell apart quietly. But to me, it was the night I learned that the best revenge doesn't always come from anger. It comes from walking away before they even know they've lost you. And 5 years later, every time Lila and I reminisce over a glass of wine, she always ends up laughing and saying the same thing. Girl, he's probably still wondering what happened. And I just smile and say, good. Because sometimes, the sweetest revenge is the silence that never stops echoing. It's strange how silence can become a kind of therapy. At first, after leaving Marcus, the quiet was almost unbearable. I'd wake up in the middle of the night expecting to hear his keys in the door, his heavy footsteps, the rustle of his jacket hitting the chair. But there was nothing. Just the low hum of the fridge and the faint crash of waves outside my new window. And then, gradually, the quiet stopped being a reminder. It started being a comfort. The kind of peace you only recognize after losing it for too long. Those first few weeks on my own felt like relearning how to live. Every small decision, from what to eat for dinner to what time I went to bed, felt oddly liberating. I didn't have to plan around his schedule. I didn't have to second-guess his excuses. I didn't have to pretend I didn't notice the lies. I was alone, yes. But I was free. Lila came over often. She'd bring wine and snacks, and we'd sit on my balcony watching the harbor lights flicker across the water. She'd always find a way to bring up Marcus, though, like testing to see if the wound had really closed. So, she said one night, sipping her drink, he's been asking around again. Apparently, he's driving everyone crazy. I smiled. Still no idea? Not a clue. He's convinced something must have happened to make you leave. Says you just vanished. Good. Doesn't it bother you that he's still out there, confused? She asked. I thought about it for a moment. No, I said finally. Because now he knows what uncertainty feels like. What it's like to keep replaying moments in your head and not understand what went wrong. Lila grinned. You're kind of terrifying, you know that? Maybe, I said. But at least I'm peaceful. I picked up a new hobby, photography. Something about capturing moments through a lens helped me process what I'd lost. I'd walk along the pier after work, taking pictures of boats, sunsets, strangers laughing. It reminded me that life went on outside the bubble of betrayal. Sometimes, I'd think about Marcus and wonder what story he was telling people. Probably that I'd gone crazy or that I'd met someone else. But that didn't matter anymore. Because while he was stuck trying to rewrite the past, I was busy creating a new one. A few months later, I ran into one of his coworkers at a cafe downtown. Her name was Kim, friendly, chatty, the kind of person who always knew a little too much about everyone. Mary, she said, recognizing me. Wow, it's been forever. How are you? I'm good, I said, smiling politely. Just keeping busy. She hesitated, then leaned in like she was about to share a secret. I probably shouldn't say this, but Marcus hasn't been doing too great. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, yeah. He's been late to work, moody all the time. He started drinking more after you left. Honestly, people at the office are kind of over it. There was a flicker of satisfaction I couldn't quite hide. Sorry to hear that, I said, taking a sip of my coffee. She laughed softly. He told everyone he has no idea why you ended things. Said you just left a note and disappeared. It's been driving him nuts. Maybe he should have paid more attention while he still had the chance, I said calmly. Kim studied me for a second. You don't seem angry. I was, I admitted. But anger's exhausting. This feels better. She nodded slowly, almost respectfully. Well, if it helps, a rumor is karma's doing its job. He started seeing someone right after you, but she dumped him too. Found out he was messaging other girls. Some people don't change. That made me laugh. No, they really don't. It's funny how life has a way of balancing itself out. By the time Marcus was trying to find his footing, I was thriving in ways I hadn't before. Work was going well. My photography had become more than just a hobby. I even started selling prints at a local art market. And for the first time in years, I felt content without needing validation from anyone. There's a certain confidence that comes from rebuilding yourself after being broken down, not flashy, not loud, just steady. Quiet strength. Then one evening, about a year after the breakup, I got an email. It was from Marcus. He'd found a new address somehow, probably through one of our mutual friends. The subject line read, "Please just tell me why." I stared at it for a long time. The body of the message was short. Mary, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I just need to understand. What did I do? Was there someone else? I've been trying to move on, but I can't without closure. Please, I deserve at least that. Deserve. That word made me laugh out loud. I deleted the email without responding. Because the truth was he didn't deserve closure. He deserved to sit in that same uncertainty, to replay the same questions, to feel the same silence he'd given me when he chose someone else. That was his closure. Lila said later, you could have told him. Just once. Told him you knew everything. I thought about it, I admitted. But why give him peace of mind? Let him think it's still a mystery. Let him keep wondering if I just woke up one day and stopped loving him. She smiled. You're colder than I thought. Not cold, I said softly. Just done. A few months after that, something unexpected happened. I met someone new. His name was Eric, a marine biologist who'd just moved to town for a research project. We met at a community fundraiser by the docks, both reaching for the same paper plate of shrimp skewers. He made a self-deprecating joke about stealing food from strangers, and I laughed, genuinely laughed, for the first time in what felt like years. We started seeing each other casually. It wasn't fireworks or grand gestures. It was easy, honest, and calm. He didn't make promises he couldn't keep. He didn't hide his phone. And for the first time, I realized how peaceful love could feel when it wasn't wrapped in anxiety. One night, while we were walking along the beach, Eric asked, "You ever been engaged before?" I paused, the sound of waves filling the silence. "Yeah," I said finally. "Didn't work out." He nodded. "His loss." I smiled. "Yeah, it was." And in that moment, I realized I didn't need revenge anymore. I already had it in the form of peace, stability, and a life that wasn't built around someone else's lies. Still, sometimes I think about that night at the restaurant. How Marcus sat there waiting for someone who would never show up. How he walked out, confused and humiliated, without realizing the person watching from across the street was the one he'd betrayed. That memory doesn't hurt anymore. It makes me grateful. Because without that betrayal, I might still be waiting for love that never existed. They say revenge loses its sweetness over time. Maybe that's true for some people. But for me, it became something different. Not bitterness, not anger, but quiet satisfaction. Knowing I reclaimed my life without sinking to his level. Knowing he'd never truly understand what happened. And knowing that, somewhere out there, Marcus still lies awake some nights, replaying that moment at the restaurant, wondering where it all went wrong. And maybe, just maybe, realizing it was the moment he decided to lie. A year and a half after I walked away, Marcus's name popped up again, not in my inbox this time, but in conversation. It happened at a coffee shop near the marina. I was waiting for my latte when a familiar voice behind me said, "Mary." I turned, and there she was, Kim again, Marcus's old coworker. She smiled, surprised but friendly. "Wow, it's been ages. You look great." "Thanks," I said, returning the smile. "How have you been?" She leaned against the counter, lowering her voice like we were sharing gossip. Good. But, you might find this interesting. I tilted my head. Oh. She chuckled. Let's just say Marcus isn't exactly living his best life. I said nothing, letting her fill the silence. Apparently, after I left, things went downhill fast. He started dating someone from his office, a woman named Tara. At first, people thought it was serious. They even moved in together. But then the same pattern started showing up. The late nights, the secretive phone, the work trips. And this time, it wasn't Tara who found out. It was her brother. According to Kim, he'd set up a tracking app on Tara's phone after she grew suspicious. One night, they followed Marcus to a bar and caught him leaving with someone else. It was a public scene. Shouting, drinks thrown, his boss hearing about it the next morning. By the end of that week, Marcus had been put on probation at work for unprofessional conduct. A month later, he quit. Kim shrugged. I guess karma caught up with him. I smiled faintly. It always does. She laughed. You must have known he'd crash eventually. I took a sip of my coffee and said I didn't need to know. I just needed to let go. That night, I sat on my balcony again, watching the water shift in the moonlight. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that used to make me anxious, but now felt like home. For a long time, I thought closure came from confrontation, from saying the last word, from making the other person understand what they'd done. But real closure isn't about them at all. It's about choosing peace over explanation. I didn't need Marcus to understand my pain. I just needed to stop living in it. A few weeks later, Lila and I were cleaning out my closet when she found a small box tucked behind a stack of old photo albums. She opened it and gasped. Is this? Yep, I said, laughing. The old engagement photos. There they were, me and Marcus, smiling at the camera, barefoot in the sand. I looked happy. Genuinely happy. Lila studied the photos for a while. You know, it's weird, she said. You don't even look like that person anymore. I tilted my head. What do you mean? You've grown into yourself. Back then, you looked like someone who was trying to be perfect for someone else. Now, you look like someone who's just, she paused, searching for the word free. I smiled. Yeah, that's exactly what I am. She held up one of the photos. Want to keep these? I thought about it for a moment, then shook my head. No, they belong to a story that's over. She grinned. Want to burn them? I laughed. You've been watching too many movies. But later that night, after she'd gone home, I sat with the photos again. I didn't feel anger. Just nostalgia, not for Marcus, but for the woman I used to be. The one who believed that love was supposed to hurt a little. I took one last look at the smiling faces, then tore the photos neatly in half and tossed them into the trash. It wasn't revenge. It was release. A few months after that, I heard that Marcus had left Wilmington. Kim texted me out of the blue. He moved to Florida. Trying to start fresh. I just replied, good for him. Because by then, it didn't matter. He could have moved across the country or across the world. I was done being a chapter in his story. The difference was, he'd never stop being one in mine. Not because I missed him, but because he taught me exactly what I'd never settle for again. One evening, Eric and I went to dinner at a small coastal restaurant, the same one where Marcus once sat alone, waiting for Claire. I hadn't been back since that night. As we waited for our food, I caught myself glancing toward the corner booth near the window, the one where Marcus had sat all those years ago, nervously checking his phone. It was empty now, sunlight spilling across the table. Eric noticed my gaze. Everything okay? Yeah, I said softly. Just remembering something. He smiled. Good memories or bad? Necessary ones, I said. And in that moment, I realized that every bit of pain, every sleepless night, every doubt I'd had, it all led here. To peace. To trust. To a version of myself that didn't need revenge to feel whole. But still, every once in a while, when I think about Marcus, I can't help but smile. Because I know somewhere out there, he's still wondering. He's probably told the story to every person he's dated since, spinning it in different ways. Maybe he says I changed or that I ran away. Maybe he still checks his messages sometimes, hoping for one that explains everything. But he'll never get one. Because the truth is, I already said everything I needed to say in that one quiet sentence on the note I left behind. You aren't right for me. That was my goodbye. My closure. My revenge. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that betrayal doesn't destroy you, it refines you. It strips away the illusions, the compromises, the noise. And what's left is clarity. Revenge doesn't always mean dramatic payback or public humiliation. Sometimes, it's just the power to walk away, leaving them to face the silence they created. Because that's the thing about silence. It doesn't fade. It echoes. And for people like Marcus, it never stops. If you've ever been betrayed, you know that closure doesn't come from answers, it comes from peace. And when you find it, when you stop chasing explanations and start choosing yourself, that's when the real revenge begins. If you enjoyed this story and believe that silence can be the sweetest revenge, don't forget to subscribe to the Betrayal Diaries. Like, share, and tell us in the comments, what's the calmest way you've ever taken your power back? Because here, every betrayal becomes a story worth telling.